A what now?
Oh, never occurred to me.
Interesting.
It's just
That's
crazy enough to
insane.
work.
Yeah.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
A what now?
China. I have to have my China. Climate and everything are the same word.
Don't be creepy.
He looks good, and he looks hard.
Jesus, I say that.
That's too much, man!
I see that you know your judo well. And now you see just how I won that championship.
Follow the ritual.
Consequences. Phrasing.
Don't be creepy.
Not gonna do it. Wouldn't be prudent at this juncture.
Cal?
Not gonna do it. Wouldn't be prudent at this juncture.
Well, we see each other once again. Good to see you, space fans. Well, we got a lot to do today, so we better get right to it. The abyss is seemingly never-ending. Thankfully, we have each other. It's been, what? A full day since we've seen each other last? Been too long. Pitchy Jr., Aaron W., DCat, good to see all three of you. It's a quiet night in space. That's okay. Well, we skipped gun violence yesterday, so it's just been piling up in the background. I guess we'll start in New York. Good old US of A.
Rid of the Second Amendment.
Where a man is in critical condition after being shot in a Queens liquor store. This is from a day ago.
San Jose police say this man who was shot by police on Sunday was a felon in possession of a firearm. Police took him into custody after they say he was shooting at an apartment complex and later shot at officers. It all went down off Colmar Road in East San Jose behind Capitol and Story Roads. Ground Force Jack Molmud has details along with what the police department is saying.
Well, the shooting here that happened Sunday in this East Side San Jose apartment complex is the third officer-involved shooting to happen so far this year. It's having city leaders wanting to look further into these officer-involved shootings when they do happen. It also has residents here at this apartment complex concerned.
This apartment complex was filled with people enjoying a warm Sunday evening.
It all started with a 911 call. People living at this East Side San Jose complex reporting a man shooting a gun outside his van. He was later identified as 41-year-old Ricardo Villarreal. And by the time police arrived, shortly after 4 in the afternoon,
the suspect then pointed his fire.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you didn't hear them, this is the third officer-involved shooting in San Jose alone this year. But yeah, just continuous. Wait a second, did I miss one? Oh, I think I did. I skipped it. I just realized we didn't even do the one in New York. What just happened? Did that get taken down? Why are we in San Jose? I just like had some sort of a weird, what do you call it? Out of body experience. I feel like I just skipped through time just now. Oh, it's back here. How did that happen?
More breaking news. This time, a man was shot inside a liquor store. This is in Queens after New York cops say he attempted to steal alcohol. The store's in Ridgewood. Cops there say the man's one of two 20-year-olds who tried to walk off with merchandise but were shooed away. We're told the pair returned, there was an assault, and the would-be thief was shot in the abdomen. He's now in critical condition. Cops say the other man ran off, but they say they arrested him a short time later.
Oh my fucking God. Every single day, people are just shooting at each other in the United States. Shit is wild. OBE. Alright, this one's ridiculous. This is from a day ago, where apparently a 16-year-old is accused of shooting and killing a bagel shop owner in Seattle.
Accused of shooting and killing a Tacoma business owner in New Orleans will be charged as an adult. For that reason, King 5 is naming the teenager tonight. Malik Cornelius has pleaded not guilty to a second-degree murder charge. He is expected back in court in August. Jacob Carter was killed back in January while visiting New Orleans with his husband. They founded Howdy Bagels during the pandemic.
For fuck's sake. Now, I'm not here to say that a 16-year-old should be charged as an adult. That is not that's not something I'm a fan of. But it's just ridiculous that I take a day off and there's like 5 or 6 stories relating to gun violence. And that's without me looking for them. That's just having them suggested to me as I look through my subscriptions on YouTube. We know there's more. Let's look in the South, where even though there's supposedly a plethora of guns and therefore everybody's safe, somebody was shot and killed yesterday in Durham, South Carolina or North Carolina.
Another active scene. A man is dead after a shooting in Durham. This happened around 8:30 last night in a business parking lot. And Nick Perlin joins us from the WRL Breaking News Tracker. This is on Guest Road, Nick, and investigators have been there. This is coming up on 9 hours now, a long time.
That's right, Jeff. And this area of Guest Road is still closed off as police continue to find out what exactly led to the shooting. And as you can see, I mean, this is a very large crime scene with forensics and the Durham police still on scene. I do want to get you to this video from the WRL Breaking News Tracker. And I mean, just take a look at all these evidence markers that are scattered on Guest Road. I counted about dozens of those. And remember, these evidence markers are marking shell casings that were left behind from gunshots. Now, what we do know...
For fuck's sake, the entire street is just covered in them. Okay. Well, let's look at a real-life example of people being upset about guns not making people safer. This is from 5 hours ago, according to the Associated Press. The Uvalde families are suing Texas police over their botched response to the school shooting in their town.
This is simply highlighting that we've settled with the city. There will be lawsuits forthcoming, most immediately against the state of Texas, which has done nothing at all but burden this town before the shooting by not giving them the resources they need, prevented these families from getting the information they need, and then blaming this city.
It's been an unbearable 2 years. We all know who took our children's lives, but there was an obvious systemic failure out there on May 24th. The whole world saw that. No amount of money is worth our lives of our children. Justice and accountability has always been my main concern. We've been let down so many times. The time has come to do the right thing.
Abso-fucking-lutely. And now, if you didn't quite catch that, they've already settled with the city of Uvalde. Now they are suing the actual state of Texas. And I think the county as well. It wasn't clear. But there's just more lawsuits coming. But they've already won one, essentially, by settling. Technically, I mean, well, I guess it depends on how you want to quantify that. Yep, good guys with guns were supposed to save people. They did not do that. And they just kept people from even attempting to save their own children. I think we I think we're all pretty familiar with the complete and utter failure of police on that day. Okay, now let's look at a couple of health-related things here in the United States. Before we move on to other things, mostly relating to either legal stuff or business stuff. Let's see here. Yeah, okay, let's start with this one. This is from 9 hours ago, where apparently South Carolina has banned all transgender treatment for minors.
South Carolina is now the latest state to ban gender-affirming care for minors. That state's governor signed a bill that bars physicians from providing hormone treatment, puberty blockers, and surgeries to patients under 18. The measure takes effect immediately. The new law also requires school officials to notify parents or guardians if their child asks to use different pronouns that do not align with their sex at birth.
Wow. Wow. This legislation is fucking wild, okay? Let's not even... We'll address the first part second. The second part that they said I find to be just completely fucking insane. If a child even references or asks about the use of different pronouns that might contradict their given sex at birth, the teachers... the school have to immediately notify the fucking parents? What? That's wild. That's wild. Then, in the same move, in the same fucking legislation, back to the first part, they want to fucking take away puberty blockers? I mean, what's the fucking purpose of all of this? I think we all know, right? It doesn't conform with Judeo-Christian values, so... so they're very upset. Just more kids being put in danger. Yep, that's a good description of what's happening here.
Now have a new way to report medical facilities that deny emergency care. The Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act states hospitals that receive federal funds must stabilize or transfer patients needing emergency care regardless of whether they can pay or whether they have mental illness. Patients who believe they were wrong.
The fact that they would put these two different things, like these three different things, all in the same legislation just speaks to how fucking twisted these people really are. Like, what the fuck? The last one is actually reasonable. Why not make a completely different bill for that one? Thanks. That'd be great. Not that in South Carolina there's any real pushback on this kind of stuff. Let's be real. I mean, there's some, but it's unfortunately not the majority in that state, from my understanding. At least in terms of representation. Okay, now let's look at, I would say, a very similarly frustrating, but different bill, which was passed southwest of South Carolina in Louisiana. This is from MSNBC from 6 hours ago, where apparently Louisiana has passed a bill to make the abortion pill a controlled, dangerous substance, like it's meth.
And joining us now, Georgetown Law School professor of constitutional law and global health policy and author of Policing the Womb, Invisible Women, and the Criminalization of Motherhood, Michelle Goodwin. Michelle, it's really good to have you. Talk to me about this Louisiana State House bill. They've already banned abortions in that state. What does it do to reclassify these two drugs?
Well, it's dangerous because what it presumes is that the only use for this drug is to terminate a pregnancy, not to manage a miscarriage, not to aid in labor and delivery, which these drugs are used for, and there are medical uses even beyond this. In fact, these drugs originally were not related to reproductive health care, but other medical conditions, which is why people would possess and use these drugs. Conflating these drugs now with heroin and other categories of drugs, which most people associate with criminal behavior, whether or not there should be, is truly a bridge too far. It's a bridge that would not have been thought of 5 years ago, but here we are in the post-Dobbs landscape.
Presumably, if a doctor needed these medications to assist in labor and delivery or to assist in another medical procedure, they'd still be able to get them. How does this make it harder?
Well, what makes this harder and something to pay close attention to is a way of trying to go around these drugs being placed in the mail. Your point is well taken, one, with regard to doctors being able to have access. But of course, in order to be able to have access, it's a matter of these drugs coming into your state. It's a matter of who is actually shipping these drugs into your state. And even if doctors have access,
this is fucking insane. Okay, to somehow classify people with the abortion pill in their possession the same way as you would someone carrying a kilo of of cocaine or heroin or something is just wildly inappropriate and makes fucking no sense whatsoever. Just further making women illegal and criminal just for existing, essentially, and wanting healthcare. Such a great society we're living in right now. For fuck's sake! All right, what's next? Okay. Katie Tur. Who is Katie Tur? Is that who we were just looking at? I'm not actually familiar with who that is. All right. To get us into talking politics a little bit here, let's actually watch a piece of this from a little channel called The Majority Report.
I know you've been doing a lot of coverage of the Trump criminal trial. We just played a clip of Marjorie Taylor Greene in the Government Oversight Committee, which is ostensibly trying to subpoena or hold into contempt Merrick Garland for not releasing the special prosecutor's tape where he interviewed Joe Biden to prove that he's old or something. I don't know exactly what that was supposed to do. But Marjorie Taylor Greene took the opportunity to essentially audition. She was mad that she was left off the travel team to go and sit out in front of Donald Trump's courtroom and essentially go around the gag order. And she was trying to prove that she could do it better than Mike Johnson. She was very pissed that Mike Johnson was there. And
Yeah, they're basically like the Greek chorus or something.
Go ahead.
Well, and so I just give us what you've got on this trial, because for me the funniest part was that they seem to be dressing like Donald Trump in some type of like way to indicate that they're going around the gag order.
Well, I didn't necessarily know that it was a way to go around the gag order, but which of course is what they're doing. But it's also, it's just, this is the uniform now, apparently. All they need is a red hat to really bring the whole thing off. it was stunning to see them all dressed in that blue suit with the red, with, you know, the standard Trump outfit, costume, apparently. I guess we all know what we're going as on Halloween. This whole thing of them traipsing down there, I actually called this ahead of time. I'm shocked. I'm not usually very good at predicting anything, but I did predict that when Rick Scott turned up, well, actually, it was prior to that, Trump was whining to anybody who would listen about the fact that there were nobody was showing up to support him, and that includes the supporter, you know, the any protest.
The picture is amazing. Just look at him. Look at what's his face? Mike Johnson. He's the rebel. He's got a striped tie on.
And that includes the supporter, you know, any protesters. And in fact, he's been lying and going out there and saying they're all here, but they won't let them in. But they, you know, they're being left out because there's nobody there. I mean, there's 2 or 3 cranks with a Trump flag, and that's about it. And so he was upset, and he was saying that he wasn't getting enough support, and he wasn't getting enough support, political support. He felt like people had not really stepped up. This was all in the shadow of that big fundraiser that he had down in Mar-a-Lago with all, where he called up all, you know, had all the VP wannabes, contenders show up in front of a bunch of rich donors, and he paraded them around like it was the Miss USA pageant.
Like, I love that comparison, right? It really does feel like the Miss USA pageant hosted by Donald Trump. Thankfully, they decided to do away with the bathing suit portion for all of us. Would have been a real travesty of justice if they decided to do that. But I just figured we'd have a little bit, just a little laugh about the current state of the vice presidential situation for the Republicans, and vicariously through Trump's fiasco of a defense for his trial right now. Doesn't appear to be going at all. It doesn't appear to have gone well, as I think we talked about it yesterday. The both sides of the trial have rested now, the prosecution and the defense, so it's now deliberation for the jury. Let's quickly talk about a different case, because we've talked about Arizona recently. We've talked about the New York City case recently, but now let's go back and talk about Georgia, as it's been a little bit of a while since we've talked about it. We did the Trump co-defendant tier list, I think, like 2 months ago, but since then it's been kind of out of the news, as there was these allegations made against Fani Willis and the assistant DA, and kind of put things on hold for a bit. However, according to the Associated Press from 21 hours ago, Fani Willis and the judge presiding over the Georgia Trump election case have defeated the challenges to their running this trial. Actually, no. I just realized something. I read that wrong. They did not actually defeat the challenges to their running the trial. No. Challengers. They're challengers in an election. I just realized what it was. All right, we're just gonna skip that. They're still in there. Okay. Misfire. All right, let's move on to Canadian-U.S. relations, where Justin Trudeau is visiting the United States to promote Team Canada strategy.
Though the audience of union members was friendly, the Prime Minister's trip to Philadelphia was all about playing defense.
More than ever, we should remind ourselves of how priceless a partnership like ours is.
Justin Trudeau was here to shore up Canada's renewed American trade strategy, an approach based on direct outreach to state governments and organized labor, working around the political uncertainty in Washington.
In this moment of turbulence, it's so important to strengthen and deepen our relationships with like-minded friends and allies.
Left unsaid is that the Trudeau government is deeply worried about the prospect of a second Donald Trump presidency.
It is to the benefit of Americans and Canadians to continue to work well together regardless of who's in the White House.
Trump has threatened to impose a 10% tariff on all foreign imports, even from allies. In Canada's eyes, tariffs are a non-starter, just years after Trump forced the renegotiation of NAFTA.
The new administration will make the choices that they make, but our position is that is not the deal that we negotiated.
Trade experts warn it's not so simple, and Trump could still make things difficult.
He knows what he wants right out of the gates. The president can impose those at least for a short period of time until Congress pulls them back. So that's going to be really disruptive for Canada.
That's why the stakes of the Team Canada approach are so high, a workaround for what may come around in November's election.
We will be there to defend effectively against unfair or punitive tariffs on Canadians, because we know it'll be a lose-lose on both sides of the border.
Well,
yeah, it actually would be. We've been trying to supposedly fight inflation by some of the worst means ever. Adding tariffs is not going to help it. We've been talking about that actually to some degree. I think we're probably going to wind up talking about it again here today. Good to see everybody else showing up slowly but surely. Nadia, AC, Del Sol Verde, Stephen K, Donald James X, Mrs. Katz. I think that's most of the people. Alright. Let's look at this. Speaking about inflation and things of that nature, Target has warned of a shopper pullback amidst its, I don't even know if you've heard of this, but recently, I think in the last few days, they announced that they were going to be lowering prices on 5,000 items. And so, I mean, in my estimation, that actually says quite a lot, and it may signal a shift in inflation. If a major retailer, such as Target, starts cutting prices dramatically, it may force other retailers to do the same. For the first time in a long time, we may actually see some price competition between between retailers. We'll see. Fingers crossed. You know, knock on wood. Who knows what'll happen? This has been incredibly just devoid of any of that for quite a while. Anyway, let's just quickly look at this.
Shares of Target fell 10% Wednesday morning after the retailer reported quarterly earnings that missed Wall Street estimates. The big box chain also issued an underwhelming forecast for the current quarter, saying consumers were pulling back on spending. Target's results come 2 days after the company cut prices on 1,500 products, with plans to eventually lower prices on 5,000 grocery items over the summer. Companies ranging from McDonald's to PepsiCo have flagged in recent weeks the strain that Americans are under due to stubborn food inflation and the rising costs of eating out, rents, and mortgages.
Stubborn food inflation. You know, it's funny because McDonald's is part of that food inflation cost. Is there a huge part of Americans' eating habits, whether or not I think that's a good idea or not, or beneficial for anyone. That's not what I'm talking about, just the facts. they've been some of the people greedily raising prices in an unnecessary fashion just to continue propping up their profits. Capitalism is the open air prison. Funny, but also true. Okay. Let's look at this. Because the fact is, I'd actually thought about this. Not that I was planning on doing this at any point, but like just as I'm working on different aspects of the stream when I'm not actually streaming, I think about like, okay, you know, what might be my next thing to do with it or whatever else. And a couple of points I've thought about the idea of merch. Like I've seen people selling merch, but then I think about the actual impacts of doing such a thing and how we talk about, you know, plastic, like, you know, just littering the oceans and literally living inside of us because of microplastics and all these other sorts of things. And I start, you know, I think to myself, man, is that even an option I would ever choose to go down? Well, this came across my desk 8 hours ago from Climate Town, a channel we've definitely looked at in the past, where they discuss this very plight.
Fashion is a powerful force in the modern world. You think you're just throwing on your favorite band shirt, but really you're now walking the streets in a magnet that attracts a few people you want to talk to and about 100 absolute weirdos who haven't had a consensual conversation in over a decade. Seriously though, buying and wearing merch can be a great way of supporting something you care about.
Merchandising. The t-shirt is everything.
I treasured that shirt. I love that shirt. But the problem with merch and the vast majority of modern clothing is that it's being made to be thrown away. And that's not an exaggeration. Most of today's clothes are being manufactured for dirt cheap using terrible labor standards and low quality materials and being shipped thousands of miles to stores around the world only to be worn an average of 7 times before being discarded and ending up in a landfill.
It's such a sad
And that's
statistic.
if they get worn at all, because we are landfilling unused merchandise at a staggering rate. And if you're wondering why all that unused merchandise doesn't just get donated to a thrift store, a lot of it does. But due to the sheer volume of clothing we produce, up to 90% of donated clothes get rejected, and chances are it'll end up right back at the dump with its friends. It is now so cheap to make merch that companies will order thousands of shirts, give away as many as they can for promotion, and then trash whatever they've got left. There's actually an industry term regarding branded merch. They call it brand fill, which is exactly what it sounds like. And I don't normally like puns, but for some reason that one really pops. But I don't want to shit on selling merch altogether. It's one of the most consistent ways for bands and entertainers and content creators to make any money. Now that streaming services have absolutely destroyed album sales, musicians are finding it a lot easier to make $15 selling one shirt than they are scraping together thousands of unique listens at less than half a penny per play. Now, I may not be a singer, songwriter, fun guy to talk to at parties. But since merch is a good way of getting the word out about your stuff, we wanted to make some Climate Town t-shirts. When we found out about the mountains of disposable merch and the emissions and labor violations associated with it, we decided we could feel okay about it by finding a supplier who sources their materials responsibly and pays their workers a living wage. The thing is, we simply could not find that person. It was crazy. We spent literal years looking around and not making merch. But then we found a way to make shirts that we feel pretty good about, we think could be a template for other people who want to make merch too. Are they perfect? Probably not. But we figured we'd make an episode about the process and the overall problems with merch as we try to figure it out ourselves. And maybe there's a way to make merch that doesn't feel terrible. Or maybe not. You be the judge. Hi, I'm Raleigh Williams, the guy with a climate science and policy degree and the proud new owner of 846 Climate Town t-shirts.
Okay, hold on. We're not gonna watch this whole thing.
Producing CO2 to ship the clothes, you are the clothes. And I sure would love to talk about microplastics right now. Oh boy, would I love to say something like between 200,000 and 500,000 tons of microplastics from textiles enter the global marine environment each year, or even something like microplastics from your clothes can leach chemicals into your skin, and we're basically doing a huge global experiment to see how plastic tolerant the human body is. But this is a BuzzFeed list. So I guess you want to see which greenhouse gas you are based on who your middle school crush was? Remember the first 3 bullet points? Overproduction makes all 3 of those a lot worse. Now the figures on how much we overproduce are actually really hard to nail down, partially.
Hold on, let's look at those. Labor violations, greenhouse gas emissions, plastic and cotton production. Yeah, those are all, there are problems with all of those things.
A lot worse. Now the figures on how much we overproduce are actually really hard to nail down, partially because we produce so many clothes all across the world, and it's just really difficult to keep track of them. Each year we probably make somewhere between 80 and 150 billion articles of clothing, and between 10 and 40% is just wasted, never sold at all. And even if you take the low side of both of those ranges, without even considering the clothes people do buy that they probably don't really need, you end up with billions of pieces of unnecessary brand new clothing heading right for the landfill or the incinerator. Or if they're really lucky, they'll get to live out the rest of their days in the beautiful Atacama Desert in Chile in a massive dystopian heap of trash clothes that apparently sometimes burns, releasing all those synthetic fabrics and chemicals back into the sky as toxic smoke.
Not cool.
But I guess it's all worth it for an unlimited supply of shirts that say Bazinga.
He makes a good point. Bazinga. But yeah, I just thought it'd be a worthwhile and slightly fun experience, as usually Climate Town's videos are that. But it was actually a serious thing we were just talking about just now, and it's something that I've been kind of racking my brain about in terms of my own impact in the world. Anyway, overproduction. Look into your local super duper market dumpsters. Are you suggesting chat goes dumpster diving? Is that your suggestion at this time? Okay. Let's see here. Let's look at this. It's from 5 hours ago, where Reuters did a timeline of Boeing's 737 MAX crisis for our enjoyment and edification.
Also in San Francisco.
No, not that. Skipping that.
"13 minutes after a Lion Air 737 MAX plane took off from Jakarta, Indonesia in October 2018, it crashed into the sea, killing all 189 people on board. 5 months later, an Ethiopian Airlines 737 MAX crashed just 6 minutes after takeoff, killing 157 people. There is renewed scrutiny of Boeing, the company that makes the 737 MAX, after subsequent safety incidents, including a mid-air cabin panel blowout on an Alaskan Airlines flight in January 2024. Here's a timeline of events in Boeing's 737 MAX crisis. In March 2017, the 737 MAX gains U.S. Federal Aviation Administration certification. Just over a year later, Lion Air Flight 610 crashes into the Java Sea, killing all on board. In November, the FAA and Boeing say they are evaluating software or design changes to the 737 MAX jets following the crash. On March 10, 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crashes in the desert around 6 minutes after takeoff, killing 157 people on board. Days later, the FAA and other global regulators ground the 737 MAX, citing evidence of similarities between the two fatal crashes. By April, the FAA says it is forming an international safety review team.
We at Boeing are sorry for the lives lost in the recent 737 MAX accidents.
Boeing cuts MAX production by 20%. In May, it's revealed that Boeing did not tell U.S. regulators for more than a year that it inadvertently made an alarm alerting pilots to a mismatch of flight data optional on the 737 MAX, instead of standard as on earlier 737s. In October, Boeing fires the top executive of its commercial airplanes division, the first high-level departure since the two fatal crashes. That December, Boeing announces it will suspend 737 MAX production in January and fires CEO Dennis Muilenburg. In March 2020, Ethiopian investigators single out faulty systems on a 737 MAX plane in an interim report on the crash. And in May, Boeing says it has resumed redesigned 737 MAX production at a low rate. By July 2020, Boeing reaches settlement agreements in more than 90% of the wrongful death claims filed in federal court after the 2018 Lion Air crash.
The Boeing 737 MAX crash has killed my wife, my 3 children.
An investigation by a U.S. House of Representatives panel in September finds Boeing failed in its design and development of the MAX, as well as its transparency with the FAA, and that the FAA failed in its oversight and certification. In November, the grounding order is lifted. Now, more than 2 years after the Lion Air crash, Boeing agrees with the DOJ to pay $2.5 billion.
Can you get in trouble for dumpster diving? I think it depends. I think it all depends. I think it genuinely depends. Like, if they have a lock on it, I think you're not. I think that is illegal technically in most places. But if they don't have a lock on it, you don't know. I honestly don't know. And this is not legal advice. Okay. Anyway, I think we're pretty much well caught up on that now. However, you may or may not have heard of this, but recently, a mid-air incident on another Boeing plane here, involving turbulence, wound up killing one and injuring dozens of others. Let's go to this one.
Excuse me, sir, do you feel relieved to be back home? How do you feel being back to school?
I'm in a lot of pain, and it was quite scary, but yeah, I don't think I'll be flying again for a while. Yeah, look, one huge loud noise, things were coming through the ceiling, water everywhere, people crying. Yeah, it wasn't fun.
Sheer terror and such shock. You know, you think, what's happening? Then it was shuddering, the whole plane was shuddering. And you think it's going to land on land, in the water, is it going to crack up? Because, you know, great pieces were falling off and dropping on the floor, people getting hit in the head.
Jesus.
One lady was laying on the floor, and when they tried to get her up, when the medics come on, she was screaming. It was awful.
I'm just relieved at this point because it was a very, very obviously a traumatic experience. It's hard to really describe in words. No one expects that, really, you know.
And I'm just really glad to be reuniting with my family.
So yeah, like 200 people went through a literal nightmare in the sky at hundreds of miles an hour. Now, here is the thing that we had said yesterday, right? At the time, I didn't want to say with any, certainty that it was Boeing's fault, that there were claims of extreme turbulence suddenly that wasn't in their expectations. And I think we should talk about this as sort of a way for us to start our path down talking about weather, environmental, and ecological type stuff here. This is from CBC News from 9 hours ago, where they discuss why turbulence is becoming more common and severe.
Hello, I'm Matt Galloway, and this is the Current Podcast. Andrew Davies has traveled a lot, but he has never experienced anything like the turbulence on yesterday's Singapore Airlines flight from London to Singapore.
There was so much screaming, and it was when I realised the gravity of it when I looked over my shoulder and saw the people sitting behind me with a lady who had a big gash in her head and blood pouring down her face.
The plane hit what Singapore Airlines describes as severe turbulence and suddenly dropped 1,800 meters.
Obviously, lots of people needed some help, but we tended to this gentleman and I helped carry him, get him out of the seat, and we lay him on the floor so that some medical professionals could administer CPR. They gave him CPR for at least 20 minutes.
That 73-year-old British man died, likely from a heart attack, and dozens of passengers on the plane were injured. The plane eventually made an emergency landing in Bangkok. Video from inside shows chaos, oxygen masks hanging, overhead bins dented, blood on the seats, items scattered everywhere. It is extremely rare for turbulence to kill someone, but turbulence itself has become more common. Paul Williams is an atmospheric scientist at Reading University in England. Paul, hello.
Good morning, Matt.
We heard that passenger there describing his experience. Knowing what you know, what do you think that kind of extreme turbulence would feel like if you were on that plane?
Oh, I shudder to even try to imagine it. It must have been horrendous. I think it probably was something like being on a roller coaster without any restraints in place for those passengers who didn't have their seatbelts on.
I hate that description.
There is a kind of turbulence that we classify as severe, and that has a precise definition. It means that the downward motion of the plane will exceed 1g. In other words, if you're not seatbelted, gravity cannot pin you down into your seat strongly enough, and you'll lift up, you'll become a projectile inside the cabin. And by all accounts, that's what happened on this very unfortunate flight yesterday.
The plane dropped 1,800 meters, 6,000 feet in the space of just minutes.
Let's be real. Nobody wants to be a fucking projectile.
I don't want reality.
That's what I've seen in reports. Now, it's important to understand that that was not the turbulence directly. The turbulence will certainly have shaken the plane up and down, and it might have felt like tens or hundreds of feet. I think what actually would have happened, that drop, I think, by 6,000 feet over a few minutes, was almost certainly just the pilots maneuvering, lowering their altitude, descending to try and get out of the turbulence. So it was a combination, I think, of some terrifying turbulence, shaking the plane up and down, and then a controlled maneuver by the pilots just to try and escape it and get as far away from it as they possibly could.
Anybody who's flown has probably experienced some degree of turbulence, being bounced around a little bit on the plane, and a warning to fasten your seatbelt, that turbulence might be ahead. What causes that? What causes turbulence?
Well, it's an interesting question. Turbulence is all around us in fluids. It's in your cup of coffee, it's in your bathtub, and it's in the atmosphere. And in the atmosphere, there are different generation sources. One of those would, of course, be flying through a storm. Nobody wants to do that. In a storm, we have rising warm air called updrafts, and we also have downdrafts. So there's vertical motion, and just those air currents pushing on the wings of the plane is enough to cause turbulence. But even away from storms, flying over a mountain range, for example, as the air flows over mountains, of course, it has to go up and over the mountain. And that can generate a kind of wave called a mountain wave, which can become turbulent. And there's a third kind of turbulence too, called clear air turbulence. And that's got to do with these fast air currents called jet streams. If the wind shear in the jet stream is too strong, that can cause this invisible clear air turbulence. And it tends to be hazardous because the pilots can't see it on the radar, and the seatbelt sign tends to be off, and you're in clear blue skies, and there's often no indication that this severe turbulence is just ahead.
Are we seeing...
Turbulence in your coffee. Yes. I mean, turbulence is just a description of fluid motion, and technically air is described as a fluid, right? But essentially, I mean, this podcast is like 12 minutes long. We're not going to listen to the whole thing. But what they discuss further is, you know, how worsening weather is essentially contributing directly to the amount of air turbulence. It makes sense, right? And so planes are now in more, I guess you would say, peril. It sounds horrible, but are in more danger than they were in the past because of the increase in storms and high winds and things like that that weren't as frequent maybe a few decades ago. Which concerns, I think, probably a lot of people, considering the fact that people like Boeing are essentially ignoring their responsibilities, spending all their money on stock buybacks and not safety, and then throwing people into these planes that are going hundreds of miles an hour in the fucking air, right? You really want to be safe when that's going down. Okay, now on to some other climate-related, but also sort of in the same vein as what we were just talking about. And this is actually something we've talked about in the past, very recently. I think in the last maybe week and a half. I can't remember the exact day all of that happened, but a little while ago, Biden essentially put a 100% tariff? It was something like a 100 or 200% tariff on Chinese manufacturer BYD. They make electric vehicles. They created a $10,000 electric car, $10,000 US electric car that is now available in Mexico and other places that don't have an antagonistic relationship with China, and the United States will not be benefiting from that. And I've talked about how it's bad for the supposed inflation that the government keeps talking about fighting with higher interest rates and other things that are bad for a lot of normal people. But it's also bad for the environment. We keep talking about wanting to go green on everything, supposedly. Meanwhile, the administration approved an incredible number of oil and gas drilling during the last 4 years. And then in this move, have essentially, made it harder for people to go green rather than easier. Just for corporate profits, really. Let's look at this from Democracy Now! This is from 10 hours ago. Will Biden undermine his own climate goals with new tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles? Oops, that's the wrong one. There we go.
This news is funded by viewers like you.
I haven't even looked. How many likes do we have right now? What's happening? We have 20 likes. Oh my god. How has nobody said anything this whole time? Okay, hold on. It's a 5. It's a 2. 5 and 2. What is that? I don't want those as Cisco. 5 is what? Morty. Okay, okay. Blam. Okay.
Juan Gonzalez. Last week at the White House, President Biden unveiled steep tariff increases on various Chinese imports, including electric vehicles, which will quadruple from the current tariff rate of 25% to 100%. Biden spoke in a ceremony at the White House, surrounded by union workers.
To make sure American workers and American business and corporations can compete and win in the industries of the future.
A spokesperson for the Chinese Ministry of Commerce responded, called the tariffs, quote, typical political manipulation. For more, we're joined by Kate Aronoff, staff writer at The New Republic, where her latest piece is headlined, 100% tariff on Chinese cars is a bad idea. She's the author of Overheated, How Capitalism Broke the Planet and How We Fight Back, and co-author of A Planet to Win, Why We Need a Green New Deal. Kate, welcome back to Democracy Now! Explain Biden's new position.
Great to be here. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call this a new position so much as an extension of what we've seen as sort of an escalation of tensions by the Biden administration, really continuing on from the Trump administration. The tariffs that were put in place on Chinese-made EVs and maintained by Biden were put in place by Trump. And so what you see is a real attempt to balance a couple of different tensions, right? You have, on the one hand, the Biden...
It is wild how many examples of Trump policies that Biden has continued. It is very frustrating. So frustrating.
Administration's climate goals. You have on the other an upcoming election and the sort of real escalation of tensions on both sides of the aisle vis-a-vis China. And then you have these industrial policy goals, right? This idea that we need to revive our manufacturing sector, that the United States needs to catch up. And so, you know, I don't think that's an easy balance to strike between all of those things. But what you see, especially I think it's important to keep in mind November here, is Biden really looking to lean into a really quite hawkish position on China.
I wanted to ask you this Biden administration position that China is dumping on the rest of the world because of its overcapacity in producing electric vehicles and solar panels. And I mean, China has produced a $12,000 electric vehicle, and the United States wants to double what it would cost if it ever came into the United States. Isn't this like...
Yeah, he makes it a good point, and he's framing it in the correct way, because technically it's not even allowed. Not only is there a tariff on it, they're not you can't put it on the road, legally speaking. From my understanding, it's not legal in any of the 50 states.
The opposite of globalization that the U.S. was trumpeting several years back?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of important things to unpack.
And the fact is it meets EU safety standards for vehicles. So you'd think that would be good enough for America as well.
Here, so you will hear
Mexico
Biden administration officials in particular use a couple of words that are a bit counterintuitive, or just don't make necessarily sense to people who don't spend time thinking about trade policy. So this concept of overcapacity and dumping, right? So the idea here is that China has intentionally made too many manufactured goods that are outpacing the sort of domestic demand, and that they are intentionally sort of quote unquote dumping, as you said, these products onto the rest of the world, onto in particular the United States and the European Union.
Which is really only a bad thing in the context of capitalism and for just a few, right? If you talk about it in the sense of environmentalism, if you have a bunch of cheap vehicles that replace, combustion engine vehicles, it's great for humanity and for the environment, right? It's just bad for Ford and GM and Mercedes and whomever else, Tesla, right? These people that are hurt by it, really, not normal people.
This is, a real live debate among econ wonks, right? But it is also just sort of the basis of building an export sector, which is something that the United States does, something that economies all over the world do in the course of, growing their economies, right? That is not sort of a strange thing to plan for, and we do it all the time, right? So, I think I don't want to overstate the effect of these sanctions. We are importing very few Chinese goods as it is, and we have very few Chinese cars, EVs in particular. But there is this real tension, right? And that if the goal,
I mean, the fact is if any anybody in a government believed in real free markets as they tout, they would encourage having real competition in the marketplace, forcing Ford and GM to lower their prices to maybe take less, CEO compensation or whatever else, right? And it's just unfortunate that many of them are way too focused on stock buybacks and all these others, because every single one of these companies we talk about, if you look at the history of their stock buybacks versus, say, R&D and other things like that, that might actually help them produce better cars at a cheaper rate, if you will, they completely shirk their responsibility in that regard, right? They would much rather enrich themselves through perverse financial instruments. Okay, what is next? Okay, let's look at real, well, not real, what's the word? Like, recent events relating to severe weather and our climate. A bunch of things to kind of look at here. I figured we'd kind of recap the last, I don't know, week on a couple of levels. Okay. Let's go to this. If you didn't see it yesterday on this show or in your feed, Yuma, Colorado, I think it was just like, it wasn't last night, I think so, it must have been 2 nights ago, was hit by a severe hailstorm, where hail the size of softballs, at least those were the biggest of the hail, came down on the town at literally 100 miles an hour. And let's look at some of the damage from this storm here, starting with this from Denver 7.
Hail and high winds ripped through Yuma, Colorado last night, leaving in its wake a trail of destruction. Just take a look at this incredible video. Today, residents and neighbors were picking up the pieces left behind. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for Denver 7 News at 5 on this Tuesday. I'm Jessica Porter.
And I'm Micah Smith. Denver 7's Veronica Acosta spoke with families as they boarded up and cleaned up in anticipation of more stormy weather ahead.
You cannot miss the damage that was done to Yuma, Colorado after Monday night's storm. When you drive into town, you're seeing pieces of homes on the side of the roads, and in neighborhoods like the one where we are now, boarded up windows are now the norm. A scary night for some in Yuma, as tornado sirens echoed through town.
You've seen a tornado before?
And hail shattered windows, even tearing through the sides of homes and businesses.
It sounded like our house was just getting slammed with like rocks, kind of, I don't know.
Victoria Riley and her family among those taking cover Monday night.
We decided we better move the girls, and right as I grabbed her, our window busted through as her and I were running out, and so I moved them into my room, and then my window started breaking, so I had to wake everybody up.
Her concern is now the cleanup, a shared feeling amongst others in her neighborhood and throughout Yuma.
Everybody lost some, they had to have.
For Kevin Means, who lives and works as a contractor in town, he prioritized boarding up his customers' homes before his own.
We haven't got to it yet. That's last on the list. So, customers come first, yeah. I got about a dozen other places I got to hit yet today to board windows up.
The damage extended from homes to cars and trucks, dents, dings, and shattered windshields all across town.
This morning it was hectic. It was very hectic.
Escobar Glass Repair, bearing the brunt of Monday night's storm 2, slammed on Tuesday with windshield repairs.
Front windshield, some door glass, back glass as well, sunroof as well, a little bit of everything.
So yeah, the effects of this storm were pretty wide. I just want to look at this one home, because this really shows you kind of what we're talking about here. This is wild.
Yuma County still cleaning up after severe weather flooded the area with hail. Take a look at this, just piling up there on the streets. It is on smashing car windows as well.
Yeah, today we found even more damage out there. Windows boarded up, nearby roads still flooded. Fox 31's Greg Nieto speaking to residents about all that damage today. Greg.
And good evening. 24 hours later, the cleanup continues. This is kind of the scenario we see from block to block in and near downtown Yuma. Entire sides of homes and fences ripped to shreds.
The corner of Main and Patane near downtown Yuma looks like a sea of confetti. But Jimmy Himes says last night, right about 9, was no party.
Like feel the ground rumbling. Everything was rumbling.
The Yuma native says a massive, bruising hailstorm kept pounding and pounding the side.
That's what I wanted to show you, is this one image. This shit is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. I assume this was a pretty normal looking house before, and now it looks apocalyptic. What in the fuck is this? I mean, granted, the house isn't down. We've seen worse, but it's just the extent of it, and the fact that it's hail, not just hail, because it's fucking massive, like baseball-sized hail coming down. And it's just, you know, you start thinking, okay, what if I was standing in the middle of that, like just unprepared for this storm? What about I was literally about to say that, so I read my mind. What about the homeless? What about people who don't have a home to hide from such a fucking storm? I mean, oh, god damn it. Okay. Praise Gary. Praise go to the Gary. What are we starting, a Gary cult? The cult of Gary? Oh, and I forgot. Oh, I was going to add the freaking, well, if you're not aware, there were also massive wildfires in Canada, which are only partly controlled at this time. They are still technically burning, I think both in BC and Alberta, causing a lot of people to have evacuated, although they've lifted some of those evacuation orders for Alberta, I believe. Fuck, I thought I added it. I'm such an idiot. Whatever. Alright, let's go to Iowa, where massive tornado touched down in Greenfield, leaving a great deal of damage. First, let's look at this. These guys are fucking idiots.
We're gonna miss the right side. Debris coming down! Deploy the subsonic soon! We get in the path of it! Can I just throw it out the window or what? Oh, just wait.
You can see the sparks as it shreds these windmills in the fields. You can see the sparks go flying.
Oh my god, it's gonna hit those wind farms. Parallel it. This road will have. Okay, it's going back right? Yeah. That's right. Destroy that windmill. Look at that windmill. Shredded that windmill. Okay. The windmill's gonna fall over. Look, there it goes. Got it? Yeah. Windmill debris in there. Let's go! Is this up? Oh my lord, just look at those. Roll the window down. Give it back to Matt.
Yeah, this shit is literal nightmare fuel. Agreed. Okay, hold on. I'm not going to watch this whole thing. I just wanted to kind of give you the real close up of this before we actually look at the aftermath of this fucking storm. This is from later, where these guys are continuing to chase this freaking tornado around, defying all sense. It's just so massive. It's just so fucking huge. It's like I said yesterday. It's like the size of like a stadium or like a, you know, like wide. It's unbelievable. It must be hundreds of yards wide. That shit is fucking insane. Meters for those of you, 100 meters wide at least, or hundreds of meters wide. I mean, it really does look like it. I mean, maybe I'm just overestimating it, but for fuck's sake. They are storm chasers, right? No, they are. They're absolutely storm chasers. You hit that right on the money. All right, let's go to this. It's from a day ago from CBS Evening News. What's next for severe storms impacting central United States? It was an actual mile wide? Was it? Is that true?
And for details on this dangerous...
I missed that little tidbit. That's much further than hundreds of yards.
And for details on this dangerous situation and what people can expect, I want to bring in meteorologist Chris Bruin from our partners at the Weather Channel. Chris?
Yeah, that's a particularly dangerous situation, and it's a notable threat here for eastern Iowa and other parts of the Midwest. The winds we already have in the blue sky that we've seen at times today, it just shows you how dangerous the environment is in the atmosphere as the storms work this direction. So that tells us they are going to intensify. They will likely produce more destructive tornadoes, so you want to take this threat very seriously. Let's take a look at the timing. You can see what it already looks like. We've got watches stretched all the way down into parts of Missouri and Arkansas, but here in Iowa, this seems to be the bulk of where we'll see the worst conditions. That's where torcons are the highest. Also into southwest Wisconsin and southern parts of Minnesota, torcon of 7. That's a notable threat here. The storms will move through quickly, and once they clear you, the threat is done and we will clear out very nicely. But the problems don't stop there. Damaging winds could exceed into Chicago and then all the way down into the mid-south come tomorrow. There's a look at our threat from Texas to Arkansas, and you can see the timing will continue through the afternoon and into tomorrow night, even early.
Wow, that's a large area of threat there, going all the way up to western New York, it looks like. However, it looks like the tornado threat is mostly in the Midwest there, going, I think, as far east as Indiana. Although there's been already, some very unexpected tornadoes that have touched down in terms of their location. Michigan was hit for the first time this year, ever, I think, in history, by a tornado. Or maybe it was by a tornado of that size. I'd have to actually look into the stats on that, but I'm pretty sure it was something like that. So who knows exactly what will happen. I hope people stay safe. Everybody has cows? Why are we talking about cows? It's gonna be a permanent F7 in Oklahoma. Let's hope not. Okay. Alright, yeah, let's look at the aftermath of this now. Just quickly gonna watch through these videos. Probably not even going to pause between them just because, just for time. Wow, I would not have expected Soul Life to be a big Celine Dion fan, but that is interesting news.
We had to go downstairs at like 8 a.m. this morning, and everything was fine after that. And then Mom was like, hey, there's sirens going off in Bridgewater. We may have to go back downstairs soon. And of course we did. And I thought it was going to pass like it did before.
Wow.
But then it got super, super loud, and my mom dragged me to the corner to make sure we were fine. And then it got really, really loud, and we thought we lost our house, but we were lucky. But like everyone else is not so much.
No.
Like my brother Cody, his
Oh,
house just
Jesus.
got wiped. And his girlfriend got stuck, but she's okay now.
That's a mattress in a
But
tree.
it was really bad, but then you see all
What
these
the
people out
fuck?
here helping each other. It's community. Everything's gonna be fine because we have each other, but it's just gonna be
The save the
really,
base.
really rough.
Save the
It
base.
is a mess. And we're only like 2-3 hours into pickup.
I'm sorry. That was. I have to see that again. That was hilarious.
Then you see all these people out here helping each other. It's community. Everything's gonna be fine because we have each other, but it's just gonna be really, really rough. It is a mess.
Focused on the
And we're
important
only
stuff.
like 2-3 hours into pickup. You never ever think it's going to happen to you. You see other people happen and you feel so
Good
terrible,
God.
but then you go, at least it wasn't me and we're okay. And then it happens to you. And then you've lost so much. Your family's out.
These houses are just fucking shredded to pieces.
Oh my God! Horizontal vortices!
Multiple people are dead, at least a dozen injured after a powerful tornado tore through a small town in Iowa.
Damn, I didn't even hear that when I was watching this earlier. Multiple people are dead from this, and dozens injured. Is that what he said? Over a dozen injured?
Are dead, at least a dozen injured after a powerful tornado tore through a small town in Iowa. Now, the tornado destroyed much of Greenfield, a town of about 2,000 people. The twister left behind, as you can see, a bleak landscape of destroyed homes and businesses and shredded trees.
Wild.
The storms and tornado warnings have now moved into Wisconsin, including a warning for the state's
The whole
capital city of
neighborhood's just
Madison.
gone.
So earlier today, the town of Greenfield was struck by a devastating tornado. Local, county, and state emergency responders quickly initiated search and rescue operations once the tornado passed through the area. The team at the Adair County Memorial Hospital worked swiftly to assist the injured while also assuring safety of their facility as it also sustained tornado damage. Due to the hospital damage, patients were needing to be transported for their injuries to nearby area hospitals. Sadly, we can confirm that there have been fatalities with this tornado. Also, injuries have been sustained by residents here in the Greenfield area. We are still working to assess and update the information as it becomes available. A mandatory curfew has been put in effect for this evening from 10 p.m. tonight until 7 a.m. tomorrow. We do anticipate that curfew lasting for some time.
All right. I think we have one more on this. Man. This entire community was just devastated by this fucking tornado. At least those guys found those two guitars, right? Let's look at this last one. This is from 8 hours ago from CBS News, where, according to them, the Midwest, right
now.
Oh, well, I went too far. Yeah. Go ahead.
Right now, folks in the Midwest are surveying damage from a series of what were devastating storms.
That's right. Officials say a tornado killed multiple people in Greenfield, Iowa, that's southwest of Des Moines. At least a dozen.
Where are they supposed to go for curfew? I guess you just You just gotta like pick up a board or like a shingle from your former house and hold it above your head. And that counts as being home. Okay, that's insensitive.
Were injured, and the conditions have also knocked out power for tens of thousands in Illinois and Wisconsin. Iowa's Governor Kim Reynolds says Greenfield is getting through it together.
It's just horrific. It's hard to describe until you can actually see it, the devastation. And it's just, but at the same time, I can't begin to tell you just how heartwarming it is to see just everybody out there helping each other.
CBS News correspondent Roxana Saberi is in Greenfield. How is the damage, Roxana?
This used to be Southwest Oak Street. It was full of homes, and now look at it. It is just piles and piles of debris. Since early this morning, we've seen people coming out here, residents going through this debris and trying to salvage what they can. They've been starting to clean up. There is not a lot that they can salvage, they say, in this area where we are. Some people have found photo books like this, full of memories that they're hoping to take home. We've also seen other mementos, people digging through, trying to find clothes and other things that they can hang on to. Radar has shown that the tornado threw debris up 6 miles into the air. And residents here tell us that they have had some of their belongings actually show up 100 miles away. The man who lives here told us that he's had kitchen appliances show up in what used to be his living room that are not his. And he's going through his home too.
Finders keepers, am I right? Just kidding. Just kidding. But for fuck's sake. Yeah, and so it looks like there's definitely going to be more really bad weather in that area again. Over this, I guess I haven't been looking for more videos for the last few hours now, I guess, but essentially going on during that time. You think FEMA will fail the people of Iowa? What?
I don't want reality.
It's just gonna also further exacerbate anybody's, you know, poverty, life problems. B-Cat is watching. Did we ask Kanye what he thinks? Why would we do that? Why would we do that? Okay, let's discuss this. This is from 8 hours ago from CBS News. According to the NOAA, this is how hot the summer may get.
So hot right now.
Following what was recorded as the hottest summer in at least 2,000 years, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or commonly known as NOAA, just released new outlooks for what this summer may bring.
That's right. And as millions of Americans look forward to celebrating the unofficial start of summer this Memorial Day weekend, the latest report indicates, and the map shows you, it's going to be hot, okay? The next few months will be warm. Temperatures are expected to be hotter than average in nearly all 50 states, except for the Dakotas, Minnesota, and Iowa.
With us now to discuss the summer outlook and our changing climate is David Yeomans. He's a meteorologist at CBS News Chicago. David, good to have you. So how much warmer is this summer expected to be, especially when compared to the record-breaking summer that we experienced last year?
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for having me. You know, first of all, if you read into the weeds on these Climate Prediction Center discussions, oftentimes the forecasters will attribute a warmer or cooler than normal outlook to things like El Nino or La Nina. Those are not expected to be a factor as we transition from one to the other this summer. Instead, their main attribution for the warmer outlook is what they call, quote, strong decadal temperature trends. In layman's terms, this means a sharp increase in temperatures that we've seen in recent decades due to man-made climate change. You know, just to remind you on the basics, the Earth is surrounded by this natural invisible blanket called the greenhouse effect, which makes the Earth a livable planet. But ever since the Industrial Revolution, when we started burning greenhouse gases, we've been artificially thickening that blanket and trapping more heat. As far as the evidence, this is overwhelming. April was the 11th month in a row with record warm global temperatures, the 13th month in a row with record warm ocean temperatures, and this could be our 16th in a row warmer than normal summer in the U.S., so the odds are stacked against us.
So hot right now.
Terrible. Fucking terrible. So yeah. And the fact is, if you heard officials in Canada talking on this here stream in the past week or so, those wildfires that are up in Canada will most likely get worse once it dries out again. And you would assume that if America is experiencing another above average temperature year, that Canada will also be doing the same to some degree. Fingers crossed that's not the case. We need we need something. We need something to give out there. Okay, let's look at something that's not sad or doomerific in any way. But it's just a marvel of science. This is from 5 hours ago, where billions of buzzing cicadas have emerged across the United States.
So you're new neighbors and you can't pound on their wall and tell them to shut up, but it's okay.
Billions of the buzzing cicadas are expected in southern and midwestern parts of the United States, thanks to a double brood, a rare occurrence not seen in centuries.
This is just the start, because when they get cooking, it's like it sounds like a science fiction movie from the 50s. It goes up and down at this little noise, and they get cooking.
The double brood is when the 13-year cicadas and the 17-year cicadas pop up at the same time.
So it's the males come up and then they mate, and then the females go up the tree. I think that's right. And then what they do is they cut a groove and they lay the eggs. The eggs then hatch, then they fall to the ground, and they go into the ground for another 17 years.
Now, of course, this is not the sign of the apocalypse, just merely a mathematical improbability, or statistically unlikely, but happens. Happens. I can't remember the exact number of years it takes for it to happen in this way. But yeah, it's it's interesting. Oh, you have cicadas, but they're loud as fuck. Yeah, they are loud. They're very, very loud and creepy looking. They just look creepy. And the shedding of their skin, that also creeps me the fuck out. Or at least I think that's what they do. Yeah, you'd have to go knocking on each individual door to tell them to shut up. I don't think they live in houses, technically. It just seems like they like hanging on trees. Otherwise, they're in the ground for like 13 to 17 years. Okay. Now let's look at another thing involving wildlife. But this one is a bit more concerning. This is from a day ago from the Associated Press, where apparently howler monkeys are dropping dead from trees in Mexico's intense heat. Shit is horrible.
Aquí tenemos. Se observa que tiene flema en el hisopado que se le está...
Que se están cayendo de los árboles con la alta temperatura que estamos viviendo en el estado de Tabasco. Este es el que está más en un estado crítico porque se quedó sin madre, se murió su madre.
Al haber mucha mortalidad o mortandad de estos animales es porque algo está pasando en la región, ¿sí? Climáticamente, la degradación, etcétera. O sea, ya no hay las condiciones ambientales propicias. O sea, se está
I stopped reading. I was reading, but I wasn't reading out loud. That's on me.
Climáticamente es porque
Mortality
algo
of
está
these animals
pasando
is
en la
high
región.
because something is happening in the region in terms of climate
La
and degradation.
etcétera. O
There are
sea,
no
ya no
longer
hay las
favorable
condiciones
environmental
ambientales
conditions.
propicias. O sea, se
In
está
other words, a link
acabando
in
un
the
eslabón del
ecosystem
ecosistema.
is disappearing. Oh, this is horrifying. Oh, God. It's so terrible, I can't even use my Paris Hilton or Will Ferrell "It's Hot" sound shots. It just wouldn't be right. It just wouldn't be right. But yeah, if you didn't quite get what's happening, it's so fucking hot in Mexico that those howler monkeys are literally just dying in the trees and falling to their deaths, like, or essentially getting to, you know, this place of being so heat exhausted that they do fall to the, it's terrible. It is just, oh, okay. Okay, that's oh, that one made me really sad. Moving along. Okay. Alright, let's look at this. Just to remind everybody of what happened here in Brazil as we go further south out of the United States. If you're not aware, they were hit by a historic flood after over a week, I think, of incredibly high and unseasonable rains, displacing over 500,000 people. Let's just look at this from DW.
Authorities in Brazil's south say they are planning to build tent cities to house some of the people displaced by historic flooding. The state of Rio Grande do Sul has been devastated by heavy rains since April, forcing 500,000 people to flee their homes. Scientists are warning that it may take a month for the floods to subside. DW's Gustavo Basso has this report from the flooded region.
5 Brazilian army boats are now the only connection in this part of Rio Grande do Sul. Artur's parents are finally ready to travel. For 3 days, they slept in an office. They didn't want to risk a boat crossing with their baby during the latest round of flooding in southern Brazil.
I think we can go now to our city. Maybe, if the car is still there, so we can go back. We work here in Arroyo de Mayo, so we came, but there was nothing left. The floods destroyed the house and our company.
Hold on, just want to go to this spot where, hold on, where is it? I just realized it's not this video. I thought this was a different video. Either way, the Rio Grande, what, you don't know what the Rio Grande do Sul is? That is a region of Brazil in the southeast. But yeah, the entire major city center in Rio Grande do Sul was flooded. Real fucking tragedy, and is still affecting people there. To current. Just wanted to remind everybody what happened with that. Let's go on to this, where British citizens are suing the government for failing to protect against homes from climate change after the ruling in who ruled? I can't remember now. I'm killing you? What have I done? What have I done? Have I done something terrible?
Europe's most important court has ruled that protection from climate change is a human right. The judgment will be put to the test in Britain by a climate change refugee who lost his clifftop home to sea erosion. Rising seawaters and increasingly violent storms caused by melting ice and warmer oceans are a special concern on Britain's east coast. Special correspondent Malcolm Brabant reports from the village of Hemsby by the North Sea.
For Kevin Jordan, this is a painful trip down memory lane.
It was natural for me to retire to a place like this. I could sit outside on my veranda, gin and tonics in the afternoon, watching the ships go by.
His dreams were wrecked 6 months ago by the cruel North Sea.
We had quite an unexpected storm, caught us unawares actually. My house was demolished because of erosion. I lost everything. There's no compensation for when you lose your house like that.
These pictures are all that remain. Jordan now lives in a social housing complex which he finds as depressing as his new status.
Climate change refugee, that's for sure. When you see these poor people trying to seek a better life in another country, it's so similar. My life has been affected very badly.
This battered coastline belongs to Hemsby in the county of Norfolk, 140 miles northeast of London. Blessed with a long, world-class sandy beach, it's a magnet for sun seekers when it stops raining. The concrete bathing platform is a benchmark. 50 years ago, it was identifiable as a Second World War defensive bunker. Now it's surrendered to the deep. Britain's Environment Agency says that this part of eastern England has one of the fastest eroding coastlines in Europe. Climate experts predict that within 25 years, a third of all of Britain's coastline, that's 1,200 miles, will be under threat from rising seawaters. And that would mean that more than 500,000 homes will be vulnerable.
You're getting quite big waves hitting Hemsby, where in the past they were probably a little bit smaller. And so you've got this hotspot of erosion.
Professor Robert Nichols, who heads the Tyndall Centre for Climate Change at the University of East Anglia, offers little comfort to those on endangered coastlines.
Even if we stabilised climate, this coast would continue to retreat. These problems would become smaller, but they wouldn't go away. So I think you've got to deal with living with erosion regardless of what's happening with climate change.
I've seen those bungalows going in 2013
Damn.
and 2018, and I tell you something, it was heartbreaking to watch. You just have to hope and pray, you know, that it doesn't get any worse.
Carol Boys wants her children to inherit her home, but the widowed former nurse fears it'll be the next cottage to succumb to future monster storms.
No kidding, she's not
I'm
far
very
away.
upset over it because, you know, it could have been stopped. It's very stressful because you don't know what's going on down here. You don't know from one day to the next. I do get the impression that nobody's listening to us. Yeah, I really do.
It is a big fight, and the big fight basically is political will.
Simon Measures is Carol Boy's next-door neighbour. From here, he runs a web design business, as well as the campaign to save Hemsby.
We spent years and years getting a plan together, so we know what material we need, where it has to go. It's all done.
Measures and his fellow activists are exasperated with their elected politicians.
We don't seem to have any push from the local council, and the local council isn't pushing our MP, and our MP isn't pushing in Parliament, and Parliament isn't pushing the Environment Agency. It just seems to be that's what's lacking just here.
Sir Brandon Lewis, Hemsby's Conservative Member of Parliament, rejects claims of political inertia. In a statement to the NewsHour, Lewis insisted he was in constant touch with the local authority about erosion. 35 miles south is history's lesson about the North Sea's voracious appetite. The lost city of Dunwich is Britain's Atlantis. Legend has it that during storms you can hear the bells.
Okay. Let's move along here to this. I just thought it was interesting to see, and I guess we could have listened to more of it, but they are in fact suing the British government based upon the ruling from, I believe, the EU recently that who was it? Norwegian women won some I can't remember which group won it, but it created a legal precedent, and while Britain is no longer part of the EU, I think they're attempting to use it still. Okay, let's look at this. Because this happened 2 days ago. We just looked at the massive hailstorm that happened in in Colorado. Now let's look at another one that happened in Poland. This is from the day before. I mean, you can really hear the sound of that coming down. Now, the hail is not as big as the hail that was in Colorado, but this is still wild to be happening in Poland. Yeah, shit is crazy. In the last week. This is all things that have happened in the last week. Jesus Christ. Well, that's your update on the environment and whatnot. Well, I hope everybody's been enjoying the stream so far. If you haven't already, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Really helps me out. If you'd like to help me out even further in what I do here at the Galactic News Network, well, you have one good option, and that is becoming a Galactic patron. Where you will gain access to space benefits unseen by the rest of the Milky Way galaxy. The link is in chat. Alright, space intermission time. First half done, second half will be incoming shortly. Grab yourself a drink, perhaps a dip in the pool, and maybe a snack. And I'll be right back.
Do you know what we're here for?
A fucking bitch.
A what now?
Don't even play. A fucking bitch.
Your name, please? What now?
Okay, I'm back. Wait, Cisco? Cisco caused the cops to pull their guns on you? Ridiculous. Wild. Alright. What next? Alright, let's start with some old space news to get things going global. This is from PBS NewsHour from 5 hours ago. Do you need more of a break? I can give you more of an intermission, but I just don't want to. Alright, I think everybody's good. Yeah. Let's look at this, where the first black astronaut candidate responds to PBS NewsHour's little questions here about going to space after a 63-year wait.
More than 60 years after he was selected, but ultimately passed over to become this country's first black astronaut, Ed Dwight finally made it to space. On Sunday, he flew aboard Blue Origin's New Shepard 25 rocket as it skimmed space on a roughly 10-minute flight. Ed Dwight was an Air Force pilot when then-President John F. Kennedy championed him as a candidate for NASA's early astronaut corps. But his plans for space travel were sidelined, and he was never granted the opportunity due to racism within the program. Dwight left the Air Force and went on to make a name for himself as a celebrated artist and sculptor. With Sunday's flight, he makes history as the oldest person to ever go to space at age 90. I spoke with Ed Dwight earlier, and I asked him about his history-making flight.
I was more interested in the power and the noise and the lifting, going straight up in the air instead of flying an airplane from from a runway or something, and it was quite fast, and we got up to the speed fairly quickly. The getting into the space part was more interesting to me than anything else. The weightlessness, I lived in a world of weightlessness, so that didn't bother me. I never got out of my seat. We were laying down in the capsule, so I never got out of my seat. There was a big 10-foot tall window that was next to me, and I was more fascinated with what was going on outside and what was going on inside.
Yep. Unfortunately, this man was denied the opportunity to go into space when he was younger and had to wait for Jeff Bezos and his phallically shaped rocket. But it seems like he did enjoy his time in space, and I'm glad he did. Okay, now on to, wait a second, what is this doing here? This is in the wrong place. There we go. It's the blue organ. Oh, God. Terrible. Terrible, but wow. Hadn't considered that one. Well played. Okay. What next? All right, let's talk a little bit about some British related stuff here. First, let's discuss this, as it's been in the news. We haven't talked about it at all. Mostly because I usually feel pretty poorly equipped to deal with some of the inner workings of UK politics sometimes, but this post office scandal has been going across my desk time and time again, and I have kind of just gone right past it. But let's look at this today. Oh shit, it's gonna do this, isn't it? Whoops, hold on. There we go.
It is considered one of the gravest injustices in British history. The post office scandal dates back a quarter century to a time when postal branch managers were accused of theft or fraud because of a faulty computer system. Between 2000 and 2014, more than 900 postal workers were wrongly accused of theft, fraud, and false accounting, with some convicted and imprisoned and others forced into bankruptcy. More than 2,000 postal workers were affected by the scandal. Some killed themselves or attempted suicide. Others said that their marriages fell apart, they became homeless, and became outcasts in their communities.
Okay, yeah, so about 20 or so years ago, nearly 1,000 postal workers were adversely affected by bad computer systems, software to some degree, and they were wrongly accused of committing crimes. Some committed suicide, and recently things have come out that that possibly the upper management of the post office knew to some degree what happened, then tried to cover it up, it seems. And it's become a massive scandal in UK politics here. This is from 17 hours ago, where the former post office chief who presided over the situation broke down in tears over an inquiry into the Horizon IT scandal.
I would just like to say, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to do this in person, how sorry I am for all that sub-postmasters and their families and others have suffered as a result of all of the matters that the inquiry has been looking into for so long. I followed and listened to all of the human impact statements, and I was very affected by them. I remember listening to one postmaster whose name I noted, who said that he would like somebody to go and stand outside his old post office with him so he could tell them exactly what he'd been through. I would do that. I am very, very sorry.
Why were you telling these parliamentarians that every prosecution involving the Horizon system had been successful and had found in favour of the Post Office?
I fully accept now that the Post Office, excuse me, the Post Office knew that. I completely accepted. Personally, I didn't know that, and I'm incredibly sorry that that happened to those.
Now, she has gotten a ton of pushback for this testimony. One, from what I can tell, a lot of people find her tears to be, I believe the term is crocodile tears, or to be insincere, somewhat just lacking any real empathy for the victims of this scandal. And then she goes so far as to say, everybody but me. I was just the one in charge of everything, and I just didn't know. And a lot of people are claiming that is also disingenuous. All right, let's look at this next one from Channel 4, where they kind of go into this a little further.
Are you going to come clean about the cover-up? Public inquiry, but as ever, no response to inquiries in public. Did you mislead Parliament? Warned about self-incrimination by the chairman. Paula Venables, like all of them, apologised mostly for what happened, not for what she did.
I remember listening to one postmaster whose name I noted, who said that he would like somebody to go and stand outside his old post office with him so he could tell them exactly what he'd been through. I would do that. I am very, very sorry.
Jason Beer, KC, for the inquiry began with a long litany of key problems, from computer bugs to the contract with Fujitsu, asking Paula Venables again and again, you knew nothing?
Correct, correct, correct.
And yet, minutes later, this.
I was sometimes criticised for being too curious and stepping too much into people's territory.
Aren't I a good guy? But she later agreed she didn't know the notorious Post Office investigations team, 100 strong, portrayed here in the ITV drama, even existed.
You know why we're here, Alan.
Jason Beer then accused her of clearly remembering when others were to blame, forgetting when she was. She denied this. Paula Venables, Select Committee, 2015, where MPs accuse her of lying. Recently, the Royal Mail boss Moya Green texted her saying,
What I have learned from the inquiry, stroke parliamentary committee, questions is very damaging. When it was clear the system was at fault, the Post Office should have raised a red flag, stopped all proceedings, given people back their money, and then tried to compensate them from the ruin this caused in their lives.
Okay. So that's about all we have time for to look into this whole situation, I think, but it is still somewhat ongoing. However, there was admissions that evidence was false, and that the government knew that it was using false evidence to convict people. It's real. It's honestly, it's a huge scandal in the UK, and you know, as Americans, I just don't think we'd pay attention to any of this ever. But at this point, since it had, I've been bombarded by this for months. It seems like it felt like it was about time to talk about it a little bit. Hopefully, we all learned something. Wait, who's sorry and why you're sorry? Del Sol Verde is sorry. Why are you apologizing? Did you do something? I'm very confused. Very confused. Don't be sorry. I don't think you've done anything that I'm aware of. Okay, let's look at this, where this is kind of causing some stir up as well in UK politics, where Rishi Sunak earlier today called for UK general election on July 4th.
Earlier today, I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament. The King has granted this request, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July. This election will take place at a time when the world is more dangerous than it has been since the end of the Cold War. Putin's Russia is waging a brutal war in Ukraine and will not stop there if he succeeds. That war has also made it all too clear the risk to our energy security. In the Middle East, the forces of Islamist extremism threaten regional and ultimately global stability. These tensions are exploited by extremists who seek to undermine our values and divide our society here at home. China is looking to dominate the 21st century by stealing a lead in technology. And migration is being weaponized by hostile states to threaten the integrity of our borders. And these uncertain times call for a clear plan and bold action to chart a course to a secure future. You must choose in this election who has that plan, who is prepared to take the bold action necessary.
Definitely not Rishi Sunak. He is not equipped to take the bold action necessary. That's a fact. Okay, but yeah. That is development. Let's move along. You once had a debit card melt in a side door? Yeah, I've actually seen that happen as well. Okay. Enough British politics, huh? Let's move on. First, let's look at the Pope, who has appealed for peace in these times of world war. Whoa, Pope. Whoa there, Pope.
Giorni in cui la sua fede avanzava nell'oscurità. E preghiamo per la pace.
Let's pray for peace. We need
Abbiamo
peace.
bisogno di pace.
The world is at war.
Il mondo è in guerra. Non dimentichiamo
That garment is over with his face.
la
Let's not
martoriata
forget the battered
Ucraina.
Ukraine.
Sta
That is suffering so
soffrendo
much.
tanto.
Let's not forget Palestine.
Non
Israel.
dimentichiamo
Let's stop this war.
Palestina, Israele, che si fermi questa guerra. Non dimentichiamo il Myanmar.
Let's not forget Myanmar. Let's not forget
E
so
non
many countries at
dimentichiamo
war.
tanti paesi in
We need to
guerra.
pray for peace in these times
Fratelli e
of the
sorelle,
world.
ci vuole pregare per la pace in questo
War. Wow. Pope sounded a little pessimistic over here. Talking about world wars. He's not wrong. There's definitely wars all over the world right now. Is his left hand broken? I don't know. I don't know. I am not his doctor. But the woke Pope said it. And let's not forget that the Pope is not actually woke. Okay. Let's look at this from a day ago, where the EU is seeking to end a dispute with Poland and agrees to use Russian frozen assets to help Ukraine.
You know, question, Vitaly, yes.
Le Conseil européen discutera de la manière dont l'Union européenne peut renforcer son soutien aux défenses de l'Ukraine et à l'avancement des efforts de reconstruction en examinant tous les différents volets du soutien que nous accordons à l'Ukraine. Et à cet égard, je suis particulièrement heureuse que nous ayons pu adopter aujourd'hui les instruments nécessaires qui vont permettre d'utiliser les bénéfices exceptionnels tirés des actifs russes immobilisés. C'est pourquoi la Belgique, en fait, était pionnière en allouant donc les recettes fiscales à l'Ukraine, y compris à des fins de soutien militaire. Grâce à la décision que nous avons pu adopter aujourd'hui, la Commission nous a informé que le premier versement pourrait même parvenir à Kiev dès le mois de juillet. Et quand on connaît les besoins de l'Ukraine à l'heure actuelle, eh bien, c'est quelque chose que nous ne pouvons que féliciter et souligner.
Vice President, thank you, Madam Minister. We'll now open the floor for the question. Yes, please.
Pause. Okay. Let's go to this. This is from, whoopsies. Is this Reuters? No, the AP. Where, according to them, Russia has continued striking civilian infrastructure in the Kharkiv region. This is from about 20 hours ago.
Why?
Okay, so as you can see, Russia is still attacking civilian infrastructure in lieu of, you know, any real contraventions of modern warfare. But let's move on. This, as they've been kind of stepping up not only their rhetoric, but some of their sort of, I guess you might call it, what do you call it? Positioning. Not positioning is the wrong word, too. Anyway, let's look at this from 15 hours ago, where Russia has begun nuclear drills in an apparent warning to the West.
The Russian Defense Ministry has kicked off drills involving tactical nuclear weapons. They're in response to what Moscow called provocative statements from the West, and seem to be a warning to top Western officials against deepening military involvement in Ukraine. So what are tactical nuclear weapons, and how do they differ from strategic nuclear weapons? Unlike nuclear-tipped intercontinental ballistic missiles, which can destroy entire cities, tactical nuclear weapons are less powerful. They have a yield of around 1 kiloton. In comparison, the American bomb dropped on Hiroshima was 15 kilotons. These weapons can be very small and therefore discreetly carried in a truck or plane. They're designed to be used against troops on the battlefield. Tactical nuclear weapons have never been used in combat. They're also not regulated by international arms control agreements. There's little insight into how many such weapons Russia has in its arsenal.
So yeah, people continue stepping up not only their rhetoric, but their actions. We've seen nuclear tests in North Korea, now nuclear drills in Russia. And yeah, people are just kinda acting fucking wild out there. Alright, let's look at this. Yeah, let's go further east. And things just continue to escalate in New Caledonia. So I figured it would behoove us to talk about it once again. But today, I figured we would talk about it from a slightly different perspective. This is from France 24 English from 5 years ago. And at the time, according to them, 30 years ago, New Caledonia hostage crisis shocked France. Now, in the past, I've sort of alluded to the previous. Oh wait, you know what? I just realized. Wait, everybody, stop. We're gonna talk about that in one more moment. I thought I moved this into space news. That's why I got fucked. Okay, you know what? Let's talk about. Or maybe we'll talk about this tomorrow. Let's just talk about this tomorrow. I'm gonna skip this. Yeah, let's go to New Caledonia. Circumventing space news. It doesn't feel right. I don't even know. Is that me just shirking my duties? Can I wait a whole day on space news? Nah, we'll be fine. He'll be fine. Moving on. Let's talk about New Caledonia. So yeah, 30 years ago, there was something of a civil war in New Caledonia. And France was deeply involved in the problems at the time, as they are today. But I figured we would look at this sort of historical perspective on what happened 30 years ago there in 1988 or something like that.
Time now for Focus. And the French overseas territory of New Caledonia is gearing up for a vote on whether or not it wants to remain part of France. The referendum comes after 3 decades of talks over the question that were sparked after a violent hostage crisis in the 1980s. At the time, pro-independence militants attacked a police station on Humpday Island and took hostages and barricaded themselves into a nearby grotto. France 3's Julien Gasparotto takes a look back at the turning point in New Caledonia's history with Peter O'Brien.
An island haunted by a tragedy.
Dans l'affaire d'Ouvéa, les politiques ont failli.
A hostage crisis which ended up a bloodbath.
Je ne regrette rien.
I don't regret anything.
Sinon,
except the deaths.
Les morts.
19 Kanak independentists and 6 French soldiers killed.
On ressent toujours la douleur. Ça va toujours graver dans
We still feel the sadness. What happened is still etched in our hearts.
Je me pose toujours la question. Qu'est-ce qu'on aurait pu faire d'autre?
What could we have done
happened
differently?
shook the whole of France, which was in the middle of a presidential election. In April 1988, violence and disorder in the French overseas territory of New Caledonia came to a head. On the 22nd, gendarmes on the island of Humpday were attacked by pro-independence militants. 4 were killed and 27 taken hostage. Some of the militants say the operation was not supposed to be violent.
The objective was to bring down the French flag and hoist the Kanak flag, to immobilize the gendarmes until that point at the end of the day.
When the gendarmes started to panic, they opened fire. Then the militants started shooting everywhere.
The drama disrupted a presidential election run between President François Mitterrand and his Prime Minister, Jacques Chirac. They called in the army and asked General Jacques Vidal to supervise the operation.
Chirac told me, I've done Algeria, I know this kind of situation. I've got on my desk a map of Humpday Island, which isn't very big. So find me these hostages and quickly.
Paris sent a swarm of men from several elite units. The island was declared a military zone and forbidden to journalists.
The army was everywhere. Helicopters, trucks. It's the kind of stuff you'd see in a war movie. Never would we have thought there'd be so many soldiers deployed here.
Philippe Legorju was in charge of the GIGN special forces there, and he doesn't understand why the army was brought in.
The gendarmerie should have dealt with it. It was as if France was declaring war on a bit of its territory.
Yeah.
In the north of the island, 16 gendarmes were being kept in a cave in the middle of the forest. It took 4 days to find them. First contact with the hostage takers was difficult, as these radio...
So yeah, in the aftermath of it, I think nearly 100 Kanak people were killed by the French armed forces during this hostage situation in the 1980s, over people who just wanted to be free of colonialism and have their own independence, something that they'd been deprived of since the 1800s. Let's look at this from a day ago, where ABC News Australia got video directly from some of the people rioting in New Caledonia.
Ils arrivent, paraît que dans les autres
In other
pays, là, ils
countries,
parlent de
they
nous
talk
comme des
about us as
terroristes, mais c'est
terrorists,
eux, en fait,
but
qui
it's
sont les
them,
terroristes,
the
c'est
French.
pas nous.
They're the ones who are the terrorists
Today,
here.
the young
Today, the
people
young people
stand
stand
because they want their self-determination.
Why are they burning? They prefer to die standing than to be kneeling, having oppression every day. They should not be surprised. The suburbs are on fire. Oh shit, this is moving way too fast. Hold on, sorry. The movement is taking place to show, not surprisingly, that no one is listening to us. Well, we're trying to listen to you, pal. I'm afraid we're a somewhat small audience, but trying to do justice to what they're going through. Okay, let's look at this, because this is the reason why we watched the video before that one. Because Emmanuel Macron, the French president, has visited New Caledonia over the last 12 hours here, as France deployed more troops amid the current unrest. As you can see, the historical parallels are certainly not lacking.
Well, these are live pictures now coming to us from Nouméa in New Caledonia, where you can see the French President Emmanuel Macron. Well, he's on the way. He's on the way to New Caledonia to calm days, weeks of violent protests. The indigenous Kanak community are very unhappy about changes to the voting system that would essentially shrink their share of the vote and their ability to influence their elections in their country. And so we have seen some pretty remarkable scenes of shops being torched and unrest on the streets. The security forces there have been strengthened in order to deal with this. 6 people, including 2 police officers, were actually killed in this recent unrest. Wayne Hay joins us now from Tauranga in New Zealand. He's following all of these developments as well. And we are expecting President Macron very shortly. What is the purpose of this trip? What is he hoping to achieve?
Well, the exact schedule hasn't been disclosed. Some reports coming out of his team say that he was finalizing the schedule or his plan on the flight over. One of the reasons for that possibly is that he's not sure exactly who's going to be willing to meet him. The plan at the moment is that he will meet with elected officials. Some of the Kanak leaders from the independence movement didn't agree to meet with him. They refused when he was there in July last year. So that's a bit up in the air. What is the plan, seemingly, is that he wants to set up some sort of task force to deal with the immediate situation and the long-term solution for New Caledonia. He is in a little bit of a difficult situation if he makes any significant announcements about the immediate situation. If he decides to, of course, scrap the bill that will go before Congress before the
Yeah. But anyway, I just thought it was worth looking at the past and this current situation juxtaposed against one another, because like I was saying before, the parallels are just so glaring. And since France started deploying troops, it's been feeling like a 2.0, if you will, of that very situation, where France is invading itself, its own colony, right? Because people are sick of being a colony. And it's wild. It is fucking wild. Okay, now let's talk about Israel a little bit here and Palestine. Okay, this is from 20 hours ago. You may have seen the post that I put up when I saw this happen before I fell asleep. But Ireland, Norway, and Spain recognized Palestine as an independent state. This is from Guardian News from 20 hours ago.
Today, Ireland, Norway, and Spain are announcing that we recognize the state of Palestine. Each of us will now undertake whatever national steps are necessary to give effect to that decision. And I'm confident that further countries will join us in taking this important step in the coming weeks. This is an historic and important day for Ireland and for Palestine.
After
having reached a consensus between the parties that make up the progressive coalition government and echoing the majority feeling of the Spanish people, next Tuesday, 28th of May, Spain will approve in its Council of Ministers the recognition of the state of Palestine. And if one thing is clear to me, it is that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has no peace project for Palestine. Fighting the terrorist group is legitimate and necessary after the events of the 7th of October. But Netanyahu is creating so much pain, and so much destruction, and so much rancor in Gaza and the rest of Palestine that the viability of the two-state solution is in serious danger. Recognition of Palestine is in support of moderate forces that are on a retreating front in a protracted and cruel conflict. This is an investment in the only solution that can bring lasting peace in the Middle East. It is a strong call to other countries to do the same as we are doing today, to recognize Palestine and thereby ensure that the process towards a two-state solution can start again and gain new momentum. Now, some of the analysis of these three leaders I would perhaps contend with, but the end result of their decisions here is phenomenal and can't be happier. Honestly, this news could not have come any. I've been waiting to hear anything like this for so long. We all have, I think, for fucking 6+ months now, or for some decades. Depends on who you are. Right. But it's just so nice to actually see some sort of legitimate movement in the direction of peace in Palestine, and freedom for Palestinians, self-governance, things like that. While it's merely a small step, it is a necessary one, it would seem. Okay, let's look at this real quick. This was 10 hours ago, where congressional leaders held a press conference, and Debbie Dingell said, quote unquote, they're not anti-Semitic in defending pro-Palestinian encampments on campuses.
I don't want reality.
Thank you so much, Lori. I'll give Vice Chair Tiddler.
Oh shit, I forgot.
Tough questions.
Son of a
today.
bitch.
It feels like that kind of day, so we'll start.
Well, I'm just gonna go directly to her. Where is it? Oh, I think it's like right here.
I urge Republicans to put that bill on the floor.
I'm just going to comment because I happen to be at one of the universities that we've had a lot of conversation. Every student deserves to be safe. And I think sometimes the kerosene that's being thrown on it from Washington isn't helping people listen to each other, to understand each other.
Were you not here when we did that soundboard shot, the sound shot, Soul Life? He says anti-Semitogen.
Anti-Semitogen.
Spelled, I think it would be like ANTISEMITOGEN, I guess. Anti-Semitogen.
Anti-Semitogen.
I've met with everybody. I was at Hillel the first week of October 7th. I've been with my Jewish students, but I've also been at the encampment on the campus. They're not anti-Semitic. We have a lot of people that are hurting in this country on both sides.
Do you think this hearing might be a type of kerosene?
I do. I think that we need for everybody to feel safe, and that we need to stand up to hate wherever we see it. And we are seeing a rise in anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, xenophobia, racism, and sexism, and that all of us should be standing up to hate wherever and whenever we see it.
You've heard me say before.
Okay. Go towards the light, Mitch. Hilarious. Anyway, just interesting to hear somebody on, like, in Congress actually admit that the pro-Palestine encampments are not anti-Semitic and that they deserve to be safe. It's wild. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about the ICC. In fact, it's kind of going to be one of the last things we talk about. If I'm being honest. It is basically going to be our last, there's one other thing I have. But let's look at this. First, let's hear what Mike Johnson has to say about the ICC's decision to seek arrest warrants for both Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant.
America should punish the ICC and put Karim Khan back in his place. And if the ICC is allowed to threaten Israel's leaders, we know that America will be next. There is a reason that we've never endorsed the
So, Mike Johnson's plan is to punish the ICC. We're going to spank them. We're going to get out the old, the old paddle from whatever fraternity Mike Johnson was in. And, you know, really go to town on the ICC, who've been bad boys and girls.
leaders. We know that America will be next. There is a reason that we've never endorsed the International Criminal Court, because it is a direct...
Because it would directly implicate the United States in a bunch of war crimes that we've already committed.
...front to our own sovereignty. We don't put any international body among or above American sovereignty, and Israel...
America is above the law and everything, according to Mike Johnson. And that's why we can't possibly recognize the ICC.
Doesn't do that either. Congress is reviewing all of our options right now. We have some very aggressive legislation that...
Dude is wild. Okay, anyway. Yeah, he wants to punish the ICC. That's his plan for just the, like, a slightly watered down request for an indictment against people committing genocide and ethnic cleansing and mass starvation and collective punishment and making me mad every day. That too. Can't forget that. That's a crime too. Alright, no. That last one's not a crime. Okay, let's go on to another verified genius like Mike Johnson. This is from a day ago on CNN, where John Bolton had opinions about the ICC as well. Let's hear what this brilliant... I can't keep it going.
Tonight, President Biden is openly rebuking the International Criminal Court prosecutor for seeking an arrest warrant against both Hamas's and the leader and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for what they say are war crimes.
Let me be clear. We reject the ICC's application of arrest warrants against Israeli leaders.
Yeah, we already saw this. Whatever.
Whatever these
we'll
warrants
watch it.
may imply, there is no equivalence between Israel and Hamas. Contrary to allegations against
Yeah,
Israel
no
by the
kidding.
International Court of Justice,
Israel's
what's happening
way
is
more
not
funded than
genocide.
Hamas.
We reject that.
That is a notable comment from President Biden there, flatly rejecting accusations that there's a genocide underway in Gaza. I should note, those accusations, which have been made in the International Court of Justice, are separate from today's actions in the International Criminal Court, which seeks to hold individual Hamas and Israeli leaders both accountable. The ICC chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, convened a group of legal experts that also included the human rights attorney, Amal Clooney, to advise on these warrants. He defended this in an exclusive interview with CNN's Christian Amanpour.
Nobody is above the law. No people by dint of birth or passport, religion, nationality, or the color of their skin have a get-out-of-jail-free card, have a free pass to say, well, the law doesn't apply to us. Every human life, every baby that is killed, whether it's a baby that's cruelly abducted by Hamas and killed, or a baby that's been bombed or killed or has died in incubators because of no electricity or water or food in Gaza, for them, for their families and humanity, it's a tragedy. And this is why we have a court. It's about the equal application of the law.
Oh, look at that. We have a triumvirate of the mods here.
Here tonight to discuss John Bolton, the former national security advisor under former President Donald Trump. Also
Caitlin
the former
Collins
US
is a
ambassador
young
to
crystal
the United
ball.
Nations and
I'm pretty sure Caitlin Collins and Crystal Ball are like pretty similar in age.
Bolton, first, let me get your reaction to what we heard from President Biden. He had a pretty blunt rebuke of what we just heard there from the chief prosecutor at the ICC and this idea that they are going to seek these warrants for both the leaders of Hamas, but also the Israeli prime minister and the defense minister.
Well, Biden is half right. What's really illegitimate here is the International Criminal Court itself. It's a fantasy. It's a piece of government.
Oh my God. Wow, Bolton. Okay, pal.
Not a. I don't want reality.
It's a fantasy.
Government, a piece
Doesn't
of government
exist.
floating around in the international ether, unchecked by executive or legislative power, utterly unable to enforce its judgments, and acting in a way that's predictably irresponsible. You know, for many years, people have referred to Israel as the canary in the coal mine.
It's irresponsible. Okay, Israel's the canary in the coal mine. Well, if Israel's the fucking canary in the coal mine, we're fucked, okay? We are fucked. This guy is so dumb. Okay, that's all we're taking for this interview. I just wanted us to hear his, at least that first part of that take. I forgot about the lineup, but I didn't mind it. Kind of helped nutshell all of this for me. But yeah, good old Bolton with his nonsensical ideas about the world. He didn't go far enough, old Joe Biden. ICC is just a made-up fantasy. Okay, John, thank you for that. Let's look at Senator Bernie Sanders in the Senate, who, among other things, said to the body and to the United States that we cannot apply international law only when it's convenient. Huh.
Illegal.
Mr. President.
Senator from Vermont.
Mr. President, there has been a lot of attention and controversy attached to a recent action by the International Criminal Court, the ICC. The core purpose of the ICC is to prosecute the most serious international crimes: genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and the crime of aggression. I believe that it is very important that all of us support accountability for these crimes and the important mission of the ICC. Mr. President, last year, the ICC declared that President Vladimir Putin of Russia was in violation of international law and that he was a war criminal. The ICC issued arrest warrants for Putin and one of his senior officials, saying there are reasonable grounds to believe that they had committed the war crime of unlawful deportation and transfer of population for their systematic kidnapping of thousands and thousands of Ukrainian children. I supported the ICC decision, and in fact, that is the tip of the iceberg of what Putin has done in Ukraine. Putin started the most destructive war in Europe since World War II. He has bombed civilians and devastated civilian infrastructure, killing at least 30,000 civilians and displacing millions more. Hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian and Russian soldiers have been killed or wounded as a result of Putin's horrific invasion of Ukraine. On that occasion, when the ICC declared Putin a war criminal, the United States government welcomed the ICC decision. A White House spokesperson said, and I quote, "There is no doubt that Russia is committing war crimes and atrocities in Ukraine, and we have been clear that those responsible must be held accountable. The ICC prosecutor is an independent actor and makes his own prosecutorial decisions based on the evidence before him. We support accountability for perpetrators of war crimes," end of quote. That is what a U.S. government spokesman said in March 2023, and I agree. In my view, Mr. Putin is, in fact, a war criminal. Mr. President, we live in a world of increasing division, tension, and hostility. Around the globe, countries are dramatically increasing their military budgets. More countries are attempting to gain nuclear weapons and other dangerous weapon systems. It is in times like these that we most need international law. Without it, we will have an even more violent world where might makes right and war criminals can act with impunity. In recent years, the ICC has attempted to hold governments and political leaders accountable for crimes against humanity. That is what they do, and that is what they are supposed to do. All wars are terrible, and very often civilian casualties are unavoidable. But after the horrors of the Second World War, countries throughout the world came together to try to establish rules to govern the conduct of war and to limit civilian casualties. The ICC's role is to enforce these limits. Mr. President, yesterday the ICC prosecutor announced that he was requesting arrest warrants for 3 top Hamas leaders, including Yahya Sinwar, the group's leader in Gaza. To my mind, Sinwar and his Hamas accomplices are clearly war criminals. The horrific October 7th terrorist attack on Israel began this war and included the mass murder of 1,200 innocent men, women, and children, the taking of hundreds of hostages, and sexual violence against captives. These war crimes are well documented, and very few people would dispute the merits of those charges.
We've heard it from literally everyone.
Mr. President, the ICC prosecutor also asked for arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister.
I feel like that exact same statement has been, like, or some iteration of it has been said, like 2 billion times now since October 7th.
Netanyahu and Defense Minister Gallant. The ICC charges focus on the use of starvation of civilians as a method of war, as well as international attacks against the civilian population. Those are the charges. The use of starvation of civilians as a method of war, clearly a war crime, as well as intentional attacks against the civilian population.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Specifically, the prosecutor says that Netanyahu is responsible for, quote, depriving civilians of objects indispensable to their survival, including willfully impeding relief supplies as provided for under the Geneva Conventions, end quote. Now, many people here in the Beltway in Washington have responded negatively to this decision from the ICC prosecutor. It seems that some folks here were comfortable with what the ICC did in terms of Putin and in terms of Sinwar, but not with Netanyahu. Some have argued that it is unfair to compare the democratically elected head of the Israeli government to Putin, who runs an authoritarian system, or Sinwar, the head of a terrorist organization. But that is not what the ICC has done. In fact, the ICC prosecutor has looked at what each of these leaders has done, looked at their actions, and then compared those actions to established standards of international law. In other words, the ICC is not making some claim of equivalence, as some have charged, but is in fact holding both sides in this current war to the same standard. Yes, democratically elected officials can commit war crimes.
Okay. Now, do I think some of what Bernie said there was unnecessary? Maybe, but I'm also kind of wanting everybody to get to the punch all the time. So maybe I'm just impatient. But yeah. Fact is we've heard time and time again already, just today, multiple U.S. officials who were all about the ICC when they issued arrest warrants against Putin and other countries that we don't have alliances with, you know, but then Israel falls on a list somewhere and suddenly it's, oh, the ICC. We just heard Bolton say the ICC is just magic. It's like, what did he call it? A fantasy? I mean, come on. Come the fuck on. I mean, freaking, we don't need to go down the list on everybody who said things. We saw it with our own eyes. Okay. This is our penultimate video here. So, well done to everybody who made it this far. So many raptors in chat. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. Alright, let's look at something that's not beautiful. In fact, you could argue it's quite the opposite. Maybe the antithesis. This is from the Associated Press from a day ago. where displaced Palestinians in the Mawasi camp face health risks as garbage continues piling up. Now, if you're unaware, Al-Mawasi is outside of Khan Yunis. It's one of the ones that's along the the Mediterranean. It's essentially on the beach. We've seen images of it before. It's completely crowded with just tents. Like, it's just tents. That's the only way to put it. It's basically the place that Israel told people to go when fleeing their offensive in Rafah. Now, the offensive in Rafah, that was a supposed red line for multiple Western countries and is currently being habitually stepped over by the IDF in this ridiculous attack on the south of Gaza. So yeah, all these people in Mawasi are essentially either have been there the whole time or have recently showed up after leaving Rafah. There have not, like, most of the refugees were in Rafah up until whatever it was, like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. Okay, let's look at this. For fuck's sake. These people are living directly adjacent to a garbage dump now because they have zero infrastructure and are living in a refugee camp without any resources. So now we've already talked about how health conditions have been dropping, not just because of starvation, but because of lack of sanitation and lack of water. And this is just compounding the situation. Life here is very tiring. Because of the garbage, we cannot sleep because of the smell. Garbage coming and going. I have 2 disabled sons. The girl does not wash or move, and scabies has spread in her. We brought her treatment, and the flies are 24 hours a day inside the tents. This is fucking wild. Shouldn't exist. That should not exist. We should not be having to. None of us should be okay with that. Modesses are dope. That's very true. Modesses are dope. Just factually accurate. Okay, final video of the day. So, we have, I feel like we end our shows with these a lot. I don't know what it is, but something about it. Mehdi Hassan at his new channel, Zateo, just seemed to be on the pulse. So good. And the conversations that he has are just continually both relevant and insightful. So this was from earlier today, or yesterday, I guess, 10 hours ago. He had the former ICC chief prosecutor, as well as Francesca Albanese, on his show to discuss the ICC ruling. So we're going to go back to talk about the ICC more. I just didn't want to end it with that footage of this garbage piling up outside of Mawasi. Keep it in your mind, but I just didn't want to be the last thing we had to deal with. Hopefully Mehdi can manage to decompress us slightly from everything we've seen today.
Joining me now to discuss these arrest warrant requests, a law professor, Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories, and Luis Moreno Ocampo, former and first chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court between 2003 and 2012. Thank you both for joining me on Mehdi Unfiltered today. Francesca, let me start with you. You and I had a conversation just a few weeks ago on a Zeteo Zoom town hall where you were very clear about what war crimes were being committed and about the need for arrest warrants. How surprised were you to see the ICC chief prosecutor come out with these requests for arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu, for Yoav Gallant, for these three Hamas leaders?
I was not surprised because this has been in the air for some weeks, right? But I was happy to see it happening because this is possibly a huge game changer in global politics and in the dynamics of the Israel-Palestine conflict, for lack of better words. I was not surprised to see application for arrest warrants against Hamas leaders. This would be expected because after his visit to Israel and Rafah, the prosecutor made it clear that he wanted to investigate what had happened on the 7th of October. I was finally happy to see action taken against two members of the Israeli war cabinet. I was surprised not to see a third one, but again, it has the potential to be a huge game changer and a way to deliver justice to the victims.
Luis, you were the ICC chief prosecutor for many years. You were the first. How big a deal is this? When you saw Karim Khan standing there on Monday morning making this announcement, how big a deal was that?
Well, it's a game change, as you say. I think we had a chance now to replace war for justice. War produced revenge. Wars produce more terrorism. The Hamas leaders indicted, they were victims also. They were removed, their family were attacked. So attacking people produced revenge, justice not. And that's why this is an opportunity, an incredible opportunity to transform the dynamic.
And how hard a decision was it for Karim Khan to take to go after the Prime Minister of Israel, a Western ally? This is not some quote-unquote African tin pot dictator. This is the Prime Minister of Israel.
I'm very proud of the institution. No? Also, he did before Putin. No? So the court is, the incredible thing is it was a court with prosecutor, brave, doing his case. Now we have three judges from three different countries, Romania, Benin, and Mexico. These are the three judges who will decide. And we're not saying Hamas leaders are guilty or Netanyahu is guilty, but they are in the investigation. They are suspects. So for me, this opens something new. We have to see, it's not, the judges are doing their job. The prosecutor did his job. Now, what else can we do? That is, for me, the point.
So I want to come back to that. Just on a technical question, since you're the expert here. How long? He's only asked for arrest warrants. They haven't been issued yet. The pre-trial chamber of the ICC has to issue arrest warrants. How long do we think we'll have to wait for those?
Well, in the Putin case, the judges took 1 month. In my Bashir case, they took 8 months. So it depends. Something...
Okay, hold on. We're not going to listen to this whole thing. It's a little longer than I would like. I mean, I guess we have time to watch the whole thing. Do we? I just don't want to. It's already been a long week. It's only Wednesday. Humpday. Let's listen to a little bit more from Francesca here.
Israel and its supporters are attacking Karim Khan for this arrest warrant, for the accusations of war crimes and crimes against humanity. Some Palestinians might argue that he went soft on Israel by not including a genocide charge in there. What's your view?
Well, yes and no. We also need to take into account the politics. So I looked at the list of crimes that he had considered, and there are not just war crimes, which is what has been discussed for a long time. There were crimes against humanity, starvation as a weapon of war, and this would be the first time the ICC.
Hi, Mono. Did I not say hello to you? I thought I did. I'm sorry. Good to see you. Good to see you made it. I think I made an offhand comment about how the triumvirate had come together all at once.
He considered this, imposing suffering, willful killing, not just murder, extermination, persecution, and attack on civilian population. So. Plus, he said that this is an investigation which is ongoing, open and active. So additional charges might follow. And also, additional charges against new suspects. So for me, this is as good as it could get. And I agree with Luis on the fact that he made his case as strong as possible, already knowing how much pressure there would be against him, against the court, and he sort of protected himself with not only with two former military prosecutors, one from the UK on his side and the other one from the US, also with a team of experts, which is okay. I understand it's US, UK with a former Israeli advisor, but this is as strong as it can get in order to move forward.
So in terms of moving forward, Luis, I was in a barber shop yesterday getting a haircut. And the guy in the chair next to me was watching the news on the screen. He said, "This is ridiculous. What a ridiculous court." It's an American guy. Ridiculous court. They're never going to get Netanyahu to trial. What's the point of this? What do you say to people who say, he's never going to see the inside of an ICC courtroom?
Well, that's the same as Bashir. Bashir was, now he's in jail. But the point here is, how we can use this in a smart way. Not politically, be smart. Israel is something that Israel never did, investigate the financials of Hamas. And that's the opportunity. US could provide evidence of the financial activities of Hamas, how they bought the weapons.
So you're saying an ICC trial, an international criminal court trial of Hamas, would actually help Israeli and Western arguments against Hamas?
More than a trial. I think, as Francesca say, Karim Khan say he's still investigating. So you can add a new...
I'm sorry, you coined your own acronym? Wild. And how did you have to file with some sort of regulatory agency to get this acronym approved, or it's just a sort of like a... What's the situation on this?
New investigation on the financial aspects. Because as a winner, I was a prosecutor for many years. You cannot control organized crime without controlling the money. And that's what we are not doing. So Israel can, instead to complain, provide evidence about the financial activities of Hamas, how they're buying the weapons.
But right now, the Israeli war cabinet doesn't care about that. They care about the fact that when Sarah and Benjamin Netanyahu go shopping in Paris, they may get arrested.
Well, but that's Netanyahu, not Israel. Israel is more than Netanyahu.
Well, right now it's the government. By the way, just on a technical point, just explain to our viewers, if an arrest warrant is issued, what does that mean practically for Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant?
Well, first, it's order in the world. These are crimes, and you are prime minister, but you also could commit crimes. The fact that you are a democracy is making worse the situation, because how a democratic leader could commit war crimes?
Agreed.
And it's not out, because President Biden is building a port to solve the starvation problem. So come on, the starvation is obvious, and starvation, my friend Israel understands, starvation is a crime, obviously. So
I just thought it was really good to hear this, and I mean, Mehdi is just fucking killing it. He's got the former ICC chief prosecutor on his goddamn show already. It's amazing. We've talked about it multiple times, but the fact he has done this in as short a time as he has is unbelievable. Just so incredible. Not that he needs my applause, but what the fuck, dude? It's just so great to see. See the internet completely embrace him leaving at MSNBC. And by leaving, I mean kind of getting fired a little bit. Pretty much for just saying the truth about Palestinians, basically. Should we watch any more of this? Maybe we'll watch... Actually, nah. Well, now maybe I'll just give you an extra long super secret stream. Well, We made it through another arduous journey, chat. Well done, everybody. It was fabulous having all of you here with me, and some would say necessary to get through everything that we've gone through tonight. All that said, it's gonna be it for me, StreamLord. Till I see you next time. You stay classy, Galactic Stream Nation. Can't forget this. These are your galactic patrons. The screen continues to get more crowded. Thanks to individuals like this, we can continue to have nice things. People like Cabby, Goth Dogs, Aaron W, Mitty, TB, Robot Cat, Morbius Dragon, The Anti-Corporatist, Moanova, Nadia, Vincent Morales, and Donald James X. All of these people help contribute to the existence of this goddamn spacecast. You too can get access to space benefits unseen by the rest of the galaxy by clicking that link in chat.